Hey, what's up, y'all? It's your boy, the Petty Poet, aka CC or aka Chris, or whatever it is I'm known by to you. And we're back with the recap because we about to recap and wrap up Charm season 6. So, as per usual, gonna introduce my girls, the three witches, played by we have Piper, played by the lovely Holly Marie Combs. And then we have my fave, Phoebe, played by the astonishingly beautiful Alyssa Milano. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Paige Matthews, the gorgeous, scream, jaw-breaking Rose McGowan. Yep. So we finna get into it. So Charm season 6. So if you remember in season 5 when we left off with them becoming goddesses and Leo leaving. He was an elder. Chris came down to help. And so now, and then Chris banished him away. When he was orbiting away, he just went pow. Leo was gone. So season 6 picks up with Phoebe, of course. Um, she's starting out with a new power. She has the power of empathy now. So her career is booming. Bitch done got this haircut. Bomb. Oh my God. I loved Phoebe's haircut. I loved it. I loved her haircut. When she cut that hair, it was so grown woman. Loved it. So that's how we start off with Phoebe. Piper is like in Lululand, child, because Leo was banished, he couldn't lift the spell. So she's just Holly, haha. She's just happy go lucky. So, yeah. And as for Paige, she decided that she wanted to try and build a life outside of magic. So she took on a series of temp jobs. So that was the start of the season. It starts off with the Valkyrie episode. Um, the Valkyrie episode was cute. It was I don't think that was a good representation. It was, but it wasn't. It was a pretty good representation of how to kick off season 6. Season 6 as a whole to me was a little bit more serious toned, but it didn't take away from the magical elements of the show. Season 5 was really fun, and I felt like season 6 gave a more serious tone because here we got Chris. We don't really know what his motives are. Um, we know he on some sneaky shit, but we don't know what he's really up to until later in the season. And then it turns out that, he's trying to keep Wyatt from turning evil. And then we have Paige, who's trying to establish a life outside of magic because in season 5 she was Miss Super Witch, and now she's trying to be Miss Super Page. But turns out every temp job she get is magical related, and she has a purpose outside of her Wiccan duties. So, and then she also gets a love interest this season, which it seemed like every season, but this one was Richard, and that was probably the storyline where Richard got on my nerves, child. That was worse than the storyline with Cole. Richard just got on my nerves. Um, she was doing this temp job where she was like sitting with an elder and an elderly lady, and turns out it was like this feud between two families. She got caught in the middle, child, and that's how she met Richard. Richard is a witch, but he don't use his powers because he gets, he loses control, child. He loses it. As far as Piper, I felt like her storyline was very interesting this season because this was the first season in a long time where she's single. So she's reestablishing herself as a single mom, living without Leo, trying to, get used to him not being around and not being her husband. And that's a adjustment. She also starts dating, and it was it was an interesting season for Piper to kind of turn around. So in that Valkyrie episode, eventually, of course, Leo is in Valhalla. They rescue Leo. Piper becomes a Valkyrie, and then she decides, eventually it's time for her to go home, and she is starting to accept the fact that Leo is gone. So that's how the season starts. Magical but serious tone. So as we moved through it, it had a lot of magical moments. Um, before I get into my faves. So there was a lot of highlights. To be honest, this was given season 2 where it was really, really hard to pick my favorite episodes because I love just about all of them. Um, let's see. I don't, let me see. I'm trying to make sure I don't pick anything off my list here. So, oh, and Phoebe gets a love interest too. Jason. I think she met Jason in season 5, and he was, yes, she met Jason in season 5. Jason moved to Hong Kong. He's her boss, and so they really get serious this season. So, um, hmm. Love's a Witch. That was the episode with Paige and the Family Feud. Um, My Three Witches is when Chris tries to teach the sisters a lesson by granting them what appears to be um, their ultimate desires, and but it could also kill them. But he didn't want to kill them. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. But that was a little fun episode. Very serious tone, but at the same time, it was very magical. Little Monsters. So I like that episode because that was when the Manicores. Um, they vanquished the Manicores and it left a baby Manicore behind. And then this monster came, and it was the little baby Manicore's dad and all of that. That was a little cute episode. Crisscross was a really good episode. So this kind of, this is where we find out that Wyatt actually grows up to be evil. That's what Chris came back to change from the future because Wyatt is evil. And baby, adult Wyatt with that hair? Child, Wyatt was fine as fuck. Excuse my language. Witch Stock was a really fun episode where Paige went back in time. Graham's cast a return to Cinder spell. So on her clothes that she would lose, and Paige put on the go-go boots, and it took her back to the summer of love. So that was a little fun episode. I Dream of Phoebe when Phoebe became um, a genie. The courtship of Wyatt's father. So Piper and Leo have a little moment, and yeah, that was a good one. They have sex. Um, so at this point, we realize that we find out that Chris is actually Leo and Wyatt's son. So he's Wyatt's little brother. So in the courtship of Wyatt's father, Leo and Piper get stuck in this alternate reality, and he gets shot with an arrow. They have sex, and then Chris is saved. So that's how we know that that they had sex. And then she finds out at the end of the episode that Chris is really her son. So some really, really good episodes. Hyde school reunion when Phoebe goes to her reunion and then she morphs back into her younger self. That was crazy. And Witch Wars, that was a fun episode. It was. Barbas made a return in this season. What was that? That was Crimes and Witch Demeanors. Because Phoebe was so desperately trying to get a premonition on her future child that she ended up it was, I forgot exactly what went down, but they got called into this thing. Inspector Daryl was on trial. He was about to be the death penalty. He was finna get the lethal injection. And Barbus had somehow tricked his way into making them guilty and shit. They had to stand on trial and whether they could continue to clean up their own magical messes. And so that was a big theme this season. But turns out that they could, but Phoebe got punished for abusing her magic, so they took away her power. So in Witch Wars, she got to get some demonic powers and kill a whole bunch of demons. So that one was, it was good. So a whole bunch of episodes to pick from, but I can only pick five. So my number five episode, favorite episode of this season is the season finale. It's a bad world, part one and two. So I hate to start off backwards, but this was a really good this was a good my number five episode. It was the season finale. Chris was born in this episode. We found out that there's an alternate reality where the charm ones are actually evil. So it's like the balance. It's the good charm ones and the bad ones. And so we find out ultimately who's trying to kill Wyatt, which eventually turns him evil. um, it was Gideon. I'll explain who Gideon is in a moment. But it was Gideon. Um, Leo ends up killing him, and it was this whole big mess. He ended up killing adult Chris, and it was a really intense, wild episode. It was a really good episode. But that was number five. I really enjoyed that episode. Number four, my number four favorite episode was Sword and the City. So, Sword in the City. Excalibur. Y'all know the story of Excalibur and King Arthur and all of that. Whoever can pull the sword is king. So Piper was able to pull the sword, and she thought she was the holder of Excalibur, but actually she was the mother of the holder of Excalibur and not the second born. So Wyatt actually is the owner. King Wyatt is the owner of Excalibur when he gets older. That was a really good episode. My third favorite episode. So I told you it was very serious tone, but this one was really funny. Power of Three Blondes. So I love this episode, the blondes, the blonde ones. So these three blonde sisters, the Stillwell sisters, I think their name was, um, switched identities with the charm ones and then took their powers, and so they had to kind of battle it out for who's who. So ultimately they were able to switch it back, get everything under control. I love this episode because it was just fun to see three other sisters, and they were goofy and blonde, and but it was a really good episode. Like, they almost got away with the shit. So that was a good one. My second favorite episode of this season, which was an amazing episode, is Forget Me Not. So Forget Me Not introduces the cleaners. So the cleaners come, the episode starts in when they come in a huff. The cleaners pop in. They're like, they're taking Wyatt. And so Piper's like, he's just a little boy. We can control, we can keep him under control. The cleaners wasn't hearing it. They wiped their memories, took the baby, took all signs of the baby, and then the next day started. So they're going on with their normal lives, and then the sense of deja vu kicks in, and then all of a sudden they start to slowly remember a little bit. So they cast a spell to see what they forgot, and then they completely remember, but they don't know why. So they're living out the previous day as normal. Turns out Wyatt conjures a dragon, and it wreaks havoc all over the city. Um, Phoebe starts a riot at work because she's an empath, so she channeled somebody's rage, started a riot. Paige was supposed to be there for a coworker friend who was getting sexually harassed, and she didn't remember what happened. So it all played out. They ended up the cleaners still took Wyatt, but they ended up just creating mischief of their own to clean up after. And so they gave Wyatt back, and it was a truce. It was a really good episode because I didn't know how they was gonna get out of that one. My number one favorite episode of the season is The Legend of Sleepy Hollowell. Now, I love this episode because it brings in the Headless Horseman. It took a serious turn, a really serious turn in the season. This is where Gideon was introduced. Gideon is a elder and the headmaster of Magic School. Magic School was also introduced in this season and in this episode. So the Headless Horseman is cutting off people's heads, but they're not dead because it's Magic School. So all of a sudden, he starts getting the charm ones one by one, and they figure it's a student. They expose the student, and all is well. Phoebe got went on a vision quest to find out that that's how she found out that Wyatt was gonna have a little brother, and she realized it was Chris. So that was a really good episode. I loved it. I love the serious tone of it, but I love the magical aspects of it. It has some humor in it. It was a really good episode. That was my favorite of the season. I have to say that season 6 probably really was my favorite season of Charmed. Um, and a lot of people are going to disagree with me. A lot of my friends are probably rolling their eyes right now. But it's my favorite season because I feel like there really wasn't a bad episode. The richer episodes did get on my nerves a little bit, but I felt like this season really pulled me through. Like I just watched it so quickly and I really enjoyed it. So that's how season 6 was. That's a wrap on season 6. We recapped it. It was everything. Um, it ended with Chris being born, Piper and Leo. There's some reconciliation there. Um, and yeah, it led into the next season. So that's a wrap on the recap of Charm season 6. I am the sun. I am the air. I am heaven and I need to be loved just like everybody else does. All right, y'all. I'm not clowning with y'all no more. I'm finna go. Bye.